All right, this is our Sorceress build. Overall, this one's actually a little bit difficult, I think, to put together because so many of the Sorceress skills are really, really good. Um, it's very hard to put too much down at the bottom here. So let's start. In the teleport tier is teleport. Okay. In the S tier, we have static, one of the best skills in the game, just absolutely massacre all sorts of monsters. Blizzard and lightning for just insane damage output. Fireball as well, insane damage output. At the lower end of the S tier, we've got meteor and frozen orb, just for the delay and just because Blizzard's a little better than orb and it doesn't quite get as good of damage. But honestly, I think they can still fall into S tier. You could argue they're very high A. That works. I think they're right there. And then I also have Cold Mastery in the back of S tier here because Cold Mastery is a minus resistance or a pierce or whatever of resistance. And so it is a huge damage boost overall for a cold skill right there. Because if you're boosting up your cold skill damage, whatever, lowering the res of the monsters is massive. And doesn't even need to always be maxed, right? Because it's just kind of depending whatever they have. So yeah, you could even put it above orb. Very solid. Good S tiers right there. At the top of the A tiers, could potentially even be in S tiers, I've got Frozen Armor. Might drop it right there, but Frozen Armor is just such a good armor. Whenever you're hit, they freeze, which is very, very helpful for survivability. Energy Shield has its times. It's not always used, but when it is, it's very strong and can be useful in creating an immortal sorceress. That's just like near impossible to kill. And telekinesis, just because the utility of it is so good. You just use it all over the place. Just so many times for picking up potions or gold or teleporting portals or teleporting waypoints or telekinesising waypoints, whatever it is. So, so good. Chain lightning, still very solid, just a little bit worse than the regular lightning. The damage isn't quite as good. If you can just be better with lightning to line them up, that ends up being better overall. Charged bolt, because it can shotgun, is actually amazing. If you ever go with a fully like maxed out lightning sorceress up to Diablo and charge bolt him, you'll murder his face. It's amazing. Like I actually did Ubers and I used charge bolt for the Ubers and it killed them. It was so good. Firewall, just because it's such a good like damage skill. The problem, of course, is it's hard to aim, hard to like place. You don't get it a ton of times, but it's such a good one for if you're playing through the game and you need a fire skill. Firewall is amazing. Also, if you watched any of the dueling that I was doing in the beta, you saw it was just crushing people, right? Insane damage over time, but it has its like very specific uses. Enchant, very good to buff your party up and can really get some high damage. And just to help little newbies, you go give it to them and let them crush everything in the early games. Fire Mastery and Lightning Mastery in the A tier right here. Not as good as the dropping of all the res, but you do get some nice damage add from those to your skills. In B tier, I've got Warmth, very helpful to have, but we've got insights and things like that. And honestly, your mana will be pretty okay, but it's nice to have a little added mana generation. Shiver Armor. Some people prefer to run this over Frozen Armor. I just prefer Frozen because this will freeze them on hit. And I believe this is just kind of in area, but it slows, not freezes. Fireball or Bolt, very low mana cost. And so can be useful. And people use this in PvP sometimes to save on mana instead of Fireball. But a very strong skill still nonetheless. Glacial Spike, you get the full coverage clear. Nova, very high damage in AoE, very good, used for just kind of like early game speedrunning, all sorts of that stuff, and can be great late game as well. And then Ice Blast, you can freeze individual monsters at high damage. Frost Nova for good AoE. The damage, there's no damage, but it's just an AoE slow for moving through the game. Ice Bolt as well. You're just going to use Ice Blast or Glacial, honestly, so that kind of drops it down some. And Chilling Armor is useful for if a ranged monster hits you, then it sends a bolt back at them. Just kind of a worse armor overall. Blaze has good damage and is actually fun for running around, but it's really not great overall. It's just Blaze, you know. Thunderstorm, unfortunately, is a slow single target hit, and it just doesn't fire off enough to really ever be worth it. And then Hydra is just too low of damage. And of course, lastly, Inferno is just complete garbage. Just an F tier skill overall. So that is the Sorceress, one of the strongest characters in the game for sure, with so many good skills. It's absolutely amazing how many of her skills are just top tier. Anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts.